It's almost impossible to find someone who doesn't know the concept of video games. Now, we have had an equal amount of characters from video games fighting in Ranting, Royale, and Target Tumble, but these two video game characters are characters that unite with their respective teams and destroy the other team. Rather, if the teams are talking humanoid alien squid children or walking plants. Inkling Girl, the orange ink shooter of Inkopolis, versus Peashooter. Come on down to Neighborville. Both almost rarely fight alone. They usually fight with team members. But today we're gonna see which one could win in a solo. Let's talk about our first opponent, the Inkling Girl.
Inklings are a fictional species of squid-like humanoids, and also the protagonists of Splatoon. The Inklings live in Inkopolis, and basically they participate in these things called turf wars, which are basically murder minus the death. I know that sounds redundant, I know it sounds idiotic, but just roll with it. Basically, the Inklings are like weird squid human hybrid thingies. Basically, after rising sea levels killed off the human species and other land-dwelling life on Earth, squids and other marine invertebrate evolved to become the dominant species on our planet. Gee, it's almost like Nintendo is trying to warn us about climate change. All you Karens might want to listen. Anyway, during this mollusk era, they developed culture, language, and especially warfare. 100 years before the events of Splatoon, Inklings and Octarians engaged in a great war referred to as the Great Turf War. Initially, the Inklings were defeated due to their inability to get up early enough. Sound like a bunch of lazy pricks, if you ask me. But they rebounded. A young Captain Cuttlefish and his comrades won, sending the Octarians away to live in underground for many years. Octarians return for the events of Splatoon 1, where the Inklings has to rescue Zapfish. All the Inklings forms have abilities associated with them in humanoid form. Inklings can splatter or a special type of colored ink by using various weapons. And the ink can, hurt people who aren't dressed up in the same color as the ink that's being used. Now, you'd think they would just stockpile a bunch of, handkerchiefs or something of different color and just, tuck them all in their pocket, and then they just put another one on when they need to walk across. But no, apparently these things have nowhere close the intelligence of real squids or humans, because they just walk in it and just explode. They haven't stopped by the nearest JCPenney, I guess. # not sponsored. No, ink can't be sprayed on oddly specific green barrels, tarps, and glass, so basically everything that you'll get sued over. And the ink is used as a projectile, which can damage other Inklings. They also can turn into a squid, which was a frickin' half of the game's marketing. Anyway, in squid form, Inklings can swim and jump through the ink, up walls. They can, if it's the same color only though, they can go through fences and grates and areas that aren't typically reachable. Squids cannot travel past striped barriers, typically at top of walls, to swim into accessible areas, while in squid form, if Inklings are not in their own ink color, they will be invisible if they stay still and when moving quickly. Only slight ripples will appear while submerged in the ink. They will also refill their ink reserves, which the humanoid Inklings can use for their weapons. When squids form Inklings on Inkless surface, they will be visible and move slowly, even slower than a humanoid Inkling. Inklings are unable to swim in water, which is pretty freaking redundant considering half of their biology is squid. Underwater, their forms dissolve because their bodies are actually made of liquid. This may also be what allows squid form Inklings to pass these rates. So they're basically like frickin' living water. Inklings also have the ability to super jump, which enables them to launch into the sky and go to the nearby Inkling or squid binking. That's pretty much all about the Inklings. So yeah, I'm just glad I didn't make too many puns. I don't like it when there are too many puns. Okay, bye.
On May 5th, 2009, Plants vs. Zombies came out. With this release came the iconic plant, the Peashooter. As time went on, the developers gave him more features and forms, making him a complete beast. Today, I'm going to talk about the Peashooter's strengths, weaknesses, and etc. Now to start this off, I'll talk about his abilities. The first one of his abilities is his Gatling Pea. Now this comes in 3 forms. We have the Gatling Pea regularly, the Gatling Pea again, but this one takes plant food, and the Retro Gatling Pea. Now Hyper is when he builds up a bunch of energy and, runs really fast, he could jump really high, and he could hover. Now, next thing I'm going to talk about is Peashooter's weapons. Now, the Peashooter has multiple weapons, the first one being his peas. Basically, shooting peas, hence the name Peashooter. Another one of Peashooter's weapons is his chili bean bombs. Now, the chili bean bombs comes in 3 different forms. Now, first we have the regular chili bean bomb, which is basically a bomb, of course, in the name, that shoots off, and it takes 3 seconds for it to blow up into like a mushroom cloud. Now the second one is a sombrero bean bomb, which is a bean bomb but with a sombrero. And this one has a much bigger blast radius, more damage, and this time it takes 5 seconds for it to detonate. Now the last one is the dark bean bomb. This one is like the chili bean bomb, but it's purple galaxy. I like it a lot more. But this one has a storage of 2. It takes 1.5 seconds to detonate, and it does a lot less damage, but it can be efficient. Now, the last one of the Peashooter's weapons is his flying flower pot. Now, the flying flower pot is basically what you think it is. It's a flying flower pot that the Peashooter can sit in and shoot from above. Now, next up is his strengths. Now, the Peashooter's peas are very strong. They're able to decapitate zombies with only like 4 peas. He's also had a bunch of experience fighting other zombies like Baron Von Bats, or the Disco Zombie, Gargantuars, or even Zomboss himself. With enough speed, he could dodge bullets, or paintball guns, lasers, sunbeams, and even missile launches. One of his main sources of energy is the sun, so if there's more sunlight, then basically he can be more stronger and more powerful. Now, the Peashooter's durability is insane, because one time he survived a city block level explosion. Now, I know it doesn't sound likely for a plant to survive that, but don't question cartoon logic. Quote, Super CJ. I believe we talked everything good about the Peashooter. Now let's talk about the things that are bad about him. Now, like I said before, the Peashooter is powered by sun. Now, the more sun he has, the more powerful he is. But here's the thing. The less sun he has, the more weaker he is. So let's say it's cloudy or it's a solar eclipse. He's basically screwed because there's no sunlight to power him up. Another one is his city block level, strength can also be defeated with enough power. And the final one is that the Peashooter isn't really the brightest one, because he's known to be tricked in the corners and such. Alrighty, I think we've covered everything about the Peashooter. But do you think he could defeat the Inkling squid that's also a kid? Let's find out.
Beautiful voice.
Our two squishy opponents are ready to battle it out, but which one will prevail, Ink or Peas? We'll figure this out today. This is Ranting Royale. It was a normal day in Inkopolis. Everyone was doing good and fine. The Inklings were having their annual turf war. The orange team ended up winning the turf war. Everyone went out of the tournament except for one Inkling, and that was the orange Inkling girl. She stayed for a while and looked at all the ink and all the war that went on in the tournament. But then, immediately, she saw something bounce into the tournament. It looked like a zombie. This zombie was a soldier. He tried to run away, but unfortunately he got his head popped off by a pea, and then immediately bounced the Peashooter. The Inkling then looked at the Peashooter, and the Peashooter did the same to the Inkling. They were both looking at each other in a very odd stance. But then, the Inkling knew what the Peashooter was trying to do. Or did she? The Peashooter was confused. The Inkling thought the Peashooter was trying to challenge her. So then, she started pointing her gun at the Peashooter. The Peashooter, really confused, started running away. But before the Peashooter could fully get away, he got shot by Ink. He then turned around and had a furious face.
Fight!
The Peashooter wasted no time and started running after the Inkling, but the Inkling ran away from the Peashooter. She shot at the Peashooter a few times, but the Peashooter dodged and kept coming. And then the Inkling put her gun in the ground and launched up all the way in the air. She was landing, figuring out where she should land, and then she saw a puddle of orange paint. She landed there. The Peashooter immediately ran up to this puddle. The Peashooter was confused to where she went, but then she started swimming around, and then she swam right behind the Peashooter and punched the Peashooter in the face, following along with a few gunshots. Well, paint shots, more like it. The Peashooter then got really mad, and then started shooting peas at the Inkling, but the Inkling dodged these peas. And then the Inkling started shooting paint at the Peashooter, but then the Peashooter dodged the paint. These two both then figured out that they weren't going to be capable of taking each other out with their normal weapons, so they got more of their insane weapons out. The Inkling then got out her ink bomb, proceeding to throw it at the Peashooter, but then the Peashooter shot out his chili bean bomb. It caused a massive explosion. Ink was everywhere. And then the Inkling started shooting at the Peashooter. And then she got out her ink sniper, trying to snipe at the Peashooter, but the Peashooter went hyper. The Peashooter was running all around the place. The Inkling had no idea where to shoot, but then she got out another weapon. This weapon started shooting a ginormous laser of ink. It shot the Peashooter, and then the Peashooter was sent flying. The Peashooter got hit by a wall, but then he got back up. And then the Peashooter turned into a Gatling pea. Following was trying to shoot at the Inkling, but then the Inkling ran and turned into a squid. Unfortunately, when she got back up, she did get shot a few times by the Gatling pea. The Inkling was bleeding out. She was bleeding out orange ink. She then looked at the Peashooter, and then she threw a couple ink bombs at him. But then the Peashooter immediately dodged these ink bombs. And then the Peashooter, trying to hit her, couldn't process and figure out where exactly to hit her. She kept turning into a kid and a squid. It was almost impossible to try and hit her. But unfortunately for the Peashooter, she got really close and rammed at him with her roller. The Peashooter was crushed. But then, immediately, the Peashooter got back up. And then, the Peashooter used his ultimate move. He ate plant food and proceeded to shoot 1 trillion peas at the Inkling. The Inkling had no idea where to go. There were too many peas. She got shot by almost all of them, and then she fell down to the ground. Wondering what to do, the Inkling was bleeding out orange blood. And then she got back up. But right when she got back up, she noticed around 3 or 2 galaxy beams. These beams were going to blow up. The Inkling, trying to turn into a squid, just couldn't for some reason. But then the Inkling gave up, and then she lied back down on the ground, accepting her fate. Poor Inkling. Well, we had to have a victor. After all, we couldn't have had another tie. So why did the Peashooter win? Both seemed equal at first. Their weapons were able to cause large building level destruction. But then you really look at it. The Peashooter has some city block level things, while the Inkling only has large to small building level things. While the Inkling may be a little bit more intelligent than the Peashooter, and may have more experience when it comes to warfare, the Peashooter has more fighting experience at the same time, because he's actually been fighting people and not shooting ink at them and easily killing them. The Peashooter does also have more destructive weapons, and he has the high ground thanks to the plant pot that can fly. So, it seems that our victor today is the Peashooter.